What's up, guys? So another thing I wanted to talk about too is, because I had made a video rant about reel sizes and stuff, and some other things that I want to talk about. Something else is the style of spool that you buy absolutely matters, right? I absolutely 100%, unless it comes on a combo. If it's free, it's if it comes with a combo, it comes with a combo. But the wedge style spool tops, the ones that will tell you it's a 2000, they'll give you the size of the spool, right? And then not accounting for the fact that you can't fill it all the way because you can only go to the edge, because then it chamfers up, right? And that's supposed to be technology so that your line can come off of there nice and smooth. All it's doing is creating a gap that, number one, is wider than it ought to be because you can't pack it all the way to the edge. Okay, and the more line you run out, the more you run out underneath that chamfer, underneath that wedge, right? So now it's made it even more difficult. Now you've got one edge to go over and another, right? So I don't buy these spools. I call those spools for beginners. Somebody who needs to know when to stop putting line on their reel. Somebody who has trouble knowing where to stop. Who can't cast well, who can't cast with a fully packed spool, right? I call those reels, I don't care. They advertise them all the time as technology. Casting technology helps you cast better. No, it doesn't. And you're technically running a size spool that's not really that size spool. Because if they're calling it a 2000 size spool and you can't pack it to the edge, it ain't a 2000 size spool, okay? That's the truth. I don't care what they say about it. It's space that can't be used, and it's space that takes up space, right? And it creates a diameter that is an artificial diameter, right? You're calling it a 2000 size spool, and I can't even pack it to the edge, right? It's nonsense. Those types of spools are nonsense. Get the straight. I mean, you're losing like 1/8 an inch, maybe even more, depending on how aggressive those wedge tops are for the spools. If you were to plane those out, bring that wedge down, you would have a lot more if it was a regular size spool that you'd be able to pack on there. It's unused space, right? And not only that, it would make the spool bigger, because the true size would be apparent at that point. If you got rid of that edge, that wedge, and allowed somebody to pack it, you would see. It's honestly, don't waste your money on bull crap. They're trying to pass this off as some kind of new technology, good for casting. It's actually horrible for casting. And it's a waste of money. They're making more material for no reason. It's material they're making that's not being used, right? And it's only making it harder to cast. I'll take a regular flat top that I can pack to the very end any day and have my line roll off of that, okay, as it lessens around that spool, okay? Going over that little itty bitty bit of an edge ain't a concern for me, okay? That technology really does not help. And at the end of the day, it's creating an unnecessary diameter that your line now has to go around, okay? And it's creating multiple points of contact once your line actually starts to come off and deplete, Okay, now it's got to go over one edge, and then it's got to go up a wedge and over the edge of that wedge. Okay, the less points of contact, the better. The less amount of friction, the better, right? You don't want a hindrance on your line, right? There's a reason why people pack. People who know how to cast and who've been fishing long enough pack their spools the way that they do, right? There's a reason why people pack their spools to the edge, right? Pack that thing like Play-Doh, right? Because we know how to cast, right? And we understand that friction kills cast, right? So the least amount of impedance that we can have put on our rod guides or our spool edge or our line, the better, right? And honestly, all they're doing is creating more mass for line to go around. And they're claiming that it slides up the wedge and it helps it come off. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. You know what that is? That's also a Band-Aid for using reels that are too big for you to be using. Given the rod guide that's probably on your ride. And the setup, the overall harmony of the setup, the synergy that you got going on. You probably it's making up for something that, you know, if you just put the right size spool on there and you packed it to the brim, you wouldn't have any issues, right? But they got to do all this extra stuff now to get you, right? And honestly, I give that to somebody who's a beginner, right? When they're learning how to spool their own spools, give them that, because they clearly cannot go past that edge, right? Because it wedges up, right? So they won't. To them, that's a border, a visual border, and they know when to stop, right? That stuff doesn't help you control your line. It doesn't help you do anything, man. Stop spending money on these spools. Those are junk, right? I don't care. And I got spools that have that style top, and they're very good spools. But at the end of the day, that concept is a junk, garbage, trash concept. It's backwards, dead logic, okay? And it does not help you cast any better. And honestly, then now they have to tell you it's a size spool that it really isn't, you know? Because that cap is going to be big, because even though it swedges upwards, it swedges out. So it's taking up space that can't be used, and space and mass and friction surface that your line has to ride over and slide up and slide past, right? And there's a point underneath it where the wedge starts, then it has to go up, and then when it comes off the top of the wedge, the very top, that's another point of friction. So you got all these angles here that ain't helping your casting. Get the regular top, right? The classic top. It casts wonderfully. Get the classic top, pack it to the edge. Trust me, pack it to the edge. Okay, people wouldn't having to intellectually create band-aids for things that don't need solutions, right? Trying to fix things that ain't broke, right? This is what happens. They have to create technology to go around things that are not broken, to sell you a solution to something that doesn't need a solution, right? They break something and then they sell you the solution. And the solution is never better than the original product, right? Go with the classic spool. If I ever see a spool, I don't care how modern it is, if it's a 2026 version, if it's a 2025, 2024, I don't care if it comes out tomorrow, okay? If it's by my favorite company, if it has that wedge cap on there, I will not buy it. Will not buy that reel. Will not buy it, right? Keep that in mind. All right, it is a system that was developed because they had to just try to reinvent the wheel, and there was nothing wrong with the original plain tops, the plain flat top spools. There's nothing wrong with those. If you know how to pack a spool, those things will cast wicked far, right? You have to be able to pack it to the edge, okay? You have to be able to learn how to do that. And if you have a spool that is preventing that is a problem. And they know that. Don't get me wrong, these manufacturers know that. They understand the science of this shit. They're not dumb, okay? And they are making money doing this, okay? And if you take a 2000 size spool and you measure it with a regular classic top that you can pack to the edge, okay, and then you take a 2000 size spool that has the wedge top, okay, and they call that a 2000, the diameters may be the same, but there's a lot of line you cannot fucking use. And there is less and less line, even probably double the line loss, okay? Once you consider the gap they start you at that you can't pack any further past, and then lose when you cast, okay? Plus the gap that is up here that you can't pack to, the edge of that, on the top side of that wedge, you're losing a lot of space, okay? It's not a true 2000 size spool. It's just mass that is made out of metal that is taking up space. That is the diameter of 2000, but that is not a 2000. If you were to cut that wedge off of there down to as far as you could pack that with line, you'd probably be working with a 1500, right? This is where they get you, okay? And people got to stop buying this shit, because this is, I've been around long enough to see what they're doing, and it's gimmick garbage, right? So have a great day.